Hi, I'm Alistair Croll, Content Chair for Cloud Connect, the upcoming conference on cloud computing happening in Santa Clara this March. I'm here with a look at the taxonomy of cloud computing offerings today. It's one of the subjects that the industry has only recently agreed upon and that will be the subject of a lot of discussion at the conference. Now, it's pretty easy to tell what kind of cloud you're talking about. Here's a good way of looking at it. When you want to move into the cloud, what you want to move there affects what kind of cloud it is. Consider, for example, that you're taking an application instance. You have a JBoss server, and you're going to take that application and port it to some kind of virtual machine or an Amazon machine image or something like that. Then you're using what we call an infrastructure cloud or infrastructure as a service. Specifically, if I'm copying a machine, then I'm using infrastructure as a service. On the other hand, if I have an intranet site, let's say I've got a WordPress blog or I've got some kind of PHP application I built or something written in Java, and I take that thing and either rewrite the code or port the code to a third-party cloud provider, but I don't actually move the machines, I just copy and paste my code, then I'm using what I would describe as an agnostic platform as a service. In this case, I moved the code, not the application, not the server instance. I'm actually moving not the application stack as a whole, but the code itself. Now, you might have an in-house application you've built, for example, support ticketing, where you've actually followed the people around in the organization and figured out what they do, and then you take that process and you rewrite it. And when you're doing that, you're dealing with what I would call a flavored platform as a service. So, for example, if you build it on QuickBase, Intuit's QuickBase platform, you're going to be building on a specific platform, but you're probably going to be tying into small business data. On the other hand, if you built something using WebEx Connect, a process for setting up meetings, for example, you're probably going to be tying into communications information. So when you are asking yourself, am I looking at an infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, the first question is, what am I copying? Am I copying machines or am I copying code? And then the second question is, that thing that I'm moving over, does it have an opinion? Does it have a flavor? Is it neutral, so it could run on anywhere, or is it tied to the environment it's in? Is it an accounting application, a CRM application, or something like that? Of course, the fourth tier here is when I take an application such as word processing, it's fairly standardized. I copy my content, my document itself, into a third-party environment, and that's pure software as a service. I'm just using someone else's word processor. Now, one way to think about cloud computing is to understand who owns what layer of the cloud environment. And really, the reason that clouds are new is that the cloud provider defines the underlying architecture. So you might want a message bus. You get to specify the characteristics and attributes of that message bus, but you don't get to specify how it's architected. And because of that, the cloud provider can control the underlying architecture, giving you a service instead, and can find economies of scale below it. So for example, in the managed hosting world, the service provider owned the hardware, but you owned everything else, including the architecture. When you look at an infrastructure as a service cloud, it's a little different. The cloud runs the hardware, the architecture, and the physical machines, and the user runs virtual machines, not the physical ones. The user is still responsible for talking to the components through APIs, and the user actually defines and writes the code on top of it. In a platform as a service world, the cloud provider gets to define the APIs. They get to constrain what they are. So if you're writing on Google App Engine, you have to use the Google API even though you're using your own Java code. In the software as a service world, even the application logic is dictated by the cloud provider. And when you look at a private cloud, it's actually a blend of the two. Internal clients are using the application, developers are spinning up a machine to do some work on it, but internal IT constrains what users can do. They can only talk to well-defined services, and they don't really have access to the underlying stack. And that's where the IT organization gets some of the efficiencies using a private cloud. This taxonomy stuff's pretty complicated, and it's the subject of a lot of debate between public and private cloud providers and technology vendors. And it's certainly one of the things we'll be discussing this March at Cloud Connect. We really hope you can join us at the conference. Thanks.